When I opened my eyes again, everything was white.
Emily, my daughter, you're finally awake. How could you be so foolish? What was so good about that man that you would?
I looked at the familiar face in front of me and was startled. It was my Aunt Lily. So, the Emily she mentioned? Daughter? I reached for the phone beside me, but Aunt Lily misunderstood my intention.
You just escaped danger. And you already want to find him? Emily Sue, wake up.
Just as I was about to explain, the door to the hospital room was pushed open.
Oh, Lily, it's just puppy love. I've told you to relax about it. Luckily, the child is fine. Otherwise,
Aunt Lily's expression changed, and she looked at me without saying anything. But I stared intently at the people in front of me. They were my so-called good parents and sister. Perhaps my gaze was too direct and filled with hatred, making everyone uncomfortable. Aunt Lily quickly changed the subject.
Where's Jenny? How is she now?
The people in front of me were stunned. Sophia reacted quickly, squeezing out a few tears.
Jenny locked herself in her room after arguing with us. We wanted to bring her out, but the fire had already separated us. Even when we went back to find her, she was already gone.
My so-called parents also lowered their heads and wiped their tears. Aunt Lily realized she had said something wrong and quickly tried to comfort them. The whole room was filled with sorrow. Only I felt cold all over, staring at Sophia with undisguised hatred. Only I knew that I wasn't arguing at the time. On the contrary, I wanted to help her. But she pushed me back into the fire, and a beam fell heavily on me. I watched myself being consumed by the flames. The excruciating pain that almost tore my soul apart severed the last bit of familial bond one had with them. Even after my death, they labeled me as immature. Sophia seemed to sense my hostility. Amid Aunt Lily's conversation with them, she leaned in and whispered in my ear.
Emily, John felt really guilty when he heard about what happened. He said that if you're willing, you two can still make up.
I restrained my urge to strangle Sophia and thought about John. I knew him. After all, Emily Sue's pursuit of John was well known in the nearby universities. Aunt Lily had her own business and was always traveling, rarely taking care of Emily Sue, only giving her endless money. Who knew it would raise someone so obsessed with love? But because Sophia was always busy currying favor with Emily Sue, acting as a go-between for her and John, she rarely had time to deal with me at school. Because of this, my time at university was relatively peaceful. But John always kept her at arm's length, taking advantage of her while spending her money. Thinking of this, I glanced at Sophia. Judging by her words, she had put a lot of effort into this relationship.
Emily, do you want to see John or not? If you do, I'll let him know.
Her sudden loudness caught Aunt Lily's, or rather, my mother's, attention. I pretended to be angry and loudly questioned her.
Why do you have to speak for me and John? Why are you always between us?
Sophia didn't expect my sudden outburst and was stunned. My former parents tried to explain.
Emily, your sister didn't mean it that way. You know she's always been good to you.
Then why does Sophia always call him brother? Did you have another cousin for me? No wonder he's always so cold to me.
No, Emily, we didn't.
Then what does it mean? Tell me, why do you always call him brother?
Under my relentless questioning, Sophia's face turned red, unable to give a reason. Finally, my mother came over to pull me away.
All right, Emily, stop.
Though she said that, having been in business for so long, my mother could see through Sophia's little schemes. Sophia's face turned pale, and she finally couldn't hold back, crying as she ran out. Mr. and Mrs. Smith followed her out. I boldly met my mother's probing gaze. Living again, I would rise above them as they once did to me. And then, I would drag them all into the abyss. I knew Sophia too well. She always liked to flatter those in power, especially someone like Emily Sue, who had wealth and connections. She would do anything to keep me close. Sure enough, on the first day of our junior year, she was waiting at the school gate early.
Sophia, Tone, cheerful Emily. There you are. Let me help you with your luggage.
She immediately pretended nothing had happened, intimately linking her arm with mine, and called her 2 little followers to help carry my luggage. I didn't refuse. After all, why not let someone else carry my luggage? All the way, Sophia tried her best to make conversation with me, but I didn't respond at all. Until we reached the dormitory door.
Sophia, Tone, hopeful Emily, are you mad at me?
Seeing her humble appearance at this moment, I felt extremely satisfied, almost wanting to laugh out loud. But the act had to continue. I pretended to be angry and pulled my sleeve out of her hand.
Emily, Tone, serious, you know I like John so much, but you still got involved with him. How can I dare to play with you anymore? From now on, we should keep our distance, and you should move out from next to me as soon as possible.
Saying that, I was about to close the door. Sophia panicked and quickly put her hand in the door. I didn't hold back, and her fingers were pinched hard, immediately swelling up. The pain made her cry for real this time. I showed hesitation and reluctance in my eyes, letting Sophia see it clearly. She seized the opportunity, almost crawling over, holding my leg tightly, crying and explaining.
Sophia, Tone, desperate, believe me, Emily, there's nothing between John and me, really nothing. Emily, if you don't believe me, you can test me. I'll do anything.
Ha, that's the sentence I wanted to hear. I sneered inwardly but showed a moved expression.
Emily, Tone, hopeful, really? Are you really willing to do anything to prove it?
Sophia nodded frantically. She couldn't afford to lose me, her ATM. I squatted down and whispered in her ear.
Emily, Tone, whispering then help me ruin someone, okay?
Sophia, Tone, hesitant, is that okay, Emily?
Sophia hesitated, but the glint in her eyes told me she was just testing the feasibility of the matter. And how much she could gain from it.
Emily, Tone, serious, it's okay. Olivia, that poor and ugly girl, dared to seduce John. I want her to pay.
Emily Sue jumped into the river because of Olivia. Previously, because John had always refused her advances, Emily Sue had a big fight with him. On her way to reconcile with him, she saw him with Olivia. Heartbroken, Emily Sue jumped into the river.
Emily, Tone, serious, 30,000. As long as you ruin Olivia's reputation, I'll give you 30,000.
When Sophia heard it was Olivia, she immediately patted her chest and guaranteed she would handle it beautifully. To motivate her, I even took out my phone and transferred 10,000 to her first. Watching Sophia's almost floating figure as she left, I was thrilled. Olivia had always been low-key at school, almost invisible, and she even needed to apply for financial aid. But such a big flaw, Sophia didn't see it. Why would the original Emily jump into the river because of such a small character? Was she really that obsessed with love? I lazily yawned. It seemed I didn't need to worry too much about Sophia. And I picked up my phone, logged into WeChat, and saw the 10,000 transferred to my small account, laughing out loud.
Emily, Tone, cheerful, I hope Sophia enjoys spending that money.
Melise, Sue, and I were in the same major, so studying wasn't difficult for me. Then, though I didn't have to worry about making a living now, I still wanted to work hard for this body, within the limited time.
During this period, a small incident occurred. After more than half a month, I saw John in person. He blocked my way after class.
Emily, why haven't you been looking for your brother lately?
Oh, please, where did this greasy guy come from? I resisted the urge to vomit and walked to the other side. But he, with a domineering attitude, placed his other hand on the wall, trapping me in the middle, leaning closer.
Emily, are you mad at your brother? Don't be mad. Let me make it up to you.
You said it.
Of course, Emily, You can do whatever you want to me.
Before he could finish, I punched him right on the nose. The sound was crisp, making my teeth ache just hearing it. John squatted down, holding his nose in disbelief, pointing at me.
Here's your medical fee. Consider the extra a gift from me.
John had never been humiliated like this by me. He stood up, ready to hit me. But I stood still, with a mocking smile, speaking word by word.
If you want to make your life difficult at home, go ahead. Bastard.
His fist hung in the air, unable to come down, and he could only glare at me with gritted teeth. Ha, he wouldn't dare to hit me. In such a big family like the Johnsons, the elders valued bloodlines greatly, especially for illegitimate children like him.
Remember, when you see me in the future, either take a detour or come over and grovel. Otherwise, you'll regret it, understand?
Under John's venomous gaze, I walked away easily.
But I still underestimated John's thick skin. I told him not to appear in front of me, so he bombarded me with messages every day.
Emily, please forgive me. I love you so much. How could I bear to hurt you? I'll bring you breakfast tomorrow and pick you up after school, okay? If you don't reply, I'll take it as a yes.
See, as long as you are tough, these men who bully the weak and fear the strong will lower themselves to beg you. I casually turned on Do Not Disturb and opened the door. Standing in front of me was Sophia. She stood there, cheeks flushed, and I invited her in.
Look at this.
Before she even sat down, she eagerly showed me her masterpiece on her phone. In the video, a girl was being held down by two people in a toilet, slapped repeatedly, her fair cheeks swollen. There were also countless indecent photos.
Isn't this great?
She presented everything to me like a dog wagging its tail. I was very satisfied. A phrase popped into my head: evil people get their comeuppance. Yes, Olivia was the mastermind behind my bullying in middle school.
And the remaining 200,000.
Oh right, I almost forgot.
I picked up my phone and transferred her 100,000.
Emily, isn't the amount wrong?
I said to ruin her, including her reputation.
Sophia hesitated. If she contacted people to spread Olivia's photos, she wouldn't have much left. At that moment, another message from John popped up.
Emily, are you still jealous? Don't worry, there's nothing between us.
Got it.
I motioned for Sophia to come closer and whispered in her ear. After we separated, we exchanged a smile, each with our own agenda. The man opposite me leaned lazily against the back of his chair, raising his glass.
As far as I know, Miss Sue previously pursued my brother to the extent of jumping into the river, right? So, tell me, why should I trust you?
I chuckled lightly, pouring myself a cup of tea.
Whether you trust me or not, you have nothing to lose, do you? And although this illegitimate brother of yours doesn't have much impact on you, even a grasshopper jumping around can be annoying, right?
He finally lifted his eyelids, glanced at me, and gestured for me to continue.
As long as you loosen up your PR a bit and add fuel to the fire at the right moment, I guarantee not only will he disappear, but the shares he secretly collected over the years will all end up in your hands. What do you think, Mr. Johnson?
The man opposite me was none other than the legitimate heir of the Johnson family, William. I maintained a proper smile, letting him scrutinize me.
I'm curious, what made your attitude towards my brother change so drastically? It can't be because of love turning into hate, right?
He propped his chin up, looking at me with interest, but beneath that facade, his eyes were cold, as if he could strike at any moment if I showed any weakness.
Let's just say I've had an epiphany after a near-death experience.
The atmosphere suddenly quieted down with my words, and he stared at me for a long time. I remained calm. After all, I was telling the truth, wasn't I? After a long while, William called the waiter to replace the tea set, poured himself a cup of tea, and also filled my cup. I understood, raised my cup, and clinked it with his.
Then I'll wait for your good news, Miss Sue.
Standing shoulder to shoulder with William at the intersection, waiting for his family driver, he politely offered me a ride.
No, thank you. It's best not to provoke her.
William shrugged and didn't insist. A Maybach stopped in front of us, and he waved at me before getting ready to get in the car. But in a split second, William's eyes suddenly sharpened, and he quickly pushed me aside. A piece of glass flew past my face, just grazing it. I took a few steps back to steady myself, feeling a burning pain on my face. Along with the glass shard came the gradually noisy sounds of a quarrel. At the source of the noise, a graceful woman holding her 2-year-old child was fiercely protected by a fat man. The woman in front of them had disheveled hair, bloodshot eyes, and was staring venomously at the woman behind the man, as if she wanted to tear her apart.
George, I've been with you for so many years, working myself to the bone, and you go out and find a mistress? How could you do this to me?
William frowned and asked the driver to give me a Band-Aid, looking at the noisy group with displeasure.
You should leave first. This isn't your problem.
Not sure what was said over there, but the woman screamed and lunged forward, cursing as she did.
Homewrecker, seductress, you dare to seduce anyone.
Hearing this, I instinctively hugged myself, trembling slightly. But I quickly came to my senses. This was no longer the past. Linda flailed her arms, trying to hit the woman behind George, but with George blocking, all her punches and kicks landed on him. This made George, who had felt a bit guilty, angrily push his wife to the ground. Linda cried heart-wrenchingly, attracting more and more people to gather around and point fingers at them. George felt humiliated, so he protected the woman and child and left without looking back. I stood in the crowd, coldly watching this farce. Sure enough, these two had never changed. Back then, when I was 12, even though we didn't have much to eat, I had inherited their good genes, so I developed well. But during puberty, there were always some boys in class who liked to make lewd jokes. I begged my mom to buy me a bra, but she refused, saying it was too expensive. I had no choice but to wrap myself with tape and old clothes. But I had to take it off before going to bed. That became my nightmare. I would never forget those nights when I woke up to find my dad sitting by my bed, lifting my blanket and greedily staring at my body. I told my mom at first, but she beat me with a broom from my room to the living room. She stripped me naked and threw me onto the street, calling me disgusting and accusing me of seducing my own father, even inviting the neighbors to come and see. This incident even made it to the local news. After that, I was always whistled at when I went to school. My desk was covered with words like slut and whore, and I didn't dare go to the bathroom, where people would come up and grope me. I begged my mom to transfer me to another school, but all I got was a serves you right. Meanwhile, my father, the culprit, continued to enjoy my services, indifferent to my suffering. Looking at the pathetic Linda on the ground, I saw the 12-year-old me in her. Hatred surged in my heart. It's not enough, it's far from enough. Linda and George should be nailed to the pillar of shame, only then would my rebirth be worth it. At home, I received a message from Lisa, the woman I had hired to be George's companion and manage my secondary account.
George is planning to separate from Linda. He's transferred about $600,000 to me, nearly draining his savings.
Her voice message was full of gratitude. She had finally saved enough for her son's surgery.
Thank you so much. I can finally afford my son's surgery.
I smiled and congratulated her, sending another $200,000 as living expenses for her and her son. I also asked her to keep up the act until George's separation was finalized. Miss Sue returned at some point, standing before me with a complicated expression.
Here, have some milk and go to bed early.
Holding the warm glass, a strange sadness welled up in my heart. I called out to her retreating figure. Mom. For some reason, I couldn't bring myself to drink the milk. I knew why. This milk wasn't meant for me, it was meant for this body. I looked out the window at the pitch-black sky. The moon was surrounded by many stars, while a single star was hidden deep in the dark clouds, occasionally flickering to show it was still there. I wanted to be the moon, loved by many. But fate didn't agree. It said I was born to be that single star. I wrapped myself tightly in my blanket. It didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered. After my revenge, whether I was a star or the moon, it wouldn't be important. John and Sophia acted quickly, and soon, the trending news in the capital exploded. Olivia's compromising photos were everywhere.
Thanks for the $10,000.
I was also pleased. $30,000 to ruin her and John's future was a good deal.
Can you believe my dad? At his age, he's still making a fuss about separating.
Really? But you're already so grown up. I heard that after a separation, there's a division of property. Who will your parents live with?
Yeah, I haven't graduated yet, and my mom doesn't have a job. I'm just afraid that if my dad leaves with another woman, he won't care about us.
I pretended not to understand her thoughts and sighed along with her. Well, don't be too sad. Your family still has 2 houses, right? Your dad can take one, and your mom can take the other. You'll still have a place to go.
But what if his heart is all for that other woman? It would be better if he couldn't get a separation. Oh, look at me, talking about this.
I put on a regretful expression, hitting myself lightly, while watching the cold light in Sophia's eyes grow. She couldn't sit still anymore, so I kindly pushed her a bit. The weekend is coming up. You should go back and persuade your dad. After all, your family just lost a sister not long ago. I watched Sophia's retreating figure, overlapping with the memory of her pushing me into the fire. Sophia, with so many sins on your back, how many layers of hell will be enough for you? Good news came quickly.
I haven't been able to reach George for the past 2 days.
I looked at the video sent by the private detective, a mocking smile on my face. Of course, she couldn't reach him. Whether he was in the belly of some wild animal, I wasn't sure. But in the video, Sophia gave me a big surprise. On Monday, I stood at the school gate early, waiting for Sophia. From a distance, I could see the joy on her face. I greeted her warmly and even went up to hug her.
Emily, what are you doing here?
Long time no see, Olivia.
Olivia? What Olivia? Emily, don't you have no friends at school?
Sophia looked puzzled as she followed my gaze, only to turn around and get slapped in the face. The next second, she was pushed to the ground, with someone straddling her and slapping her face back and forth.
Enough, Olivia. Aren't you ashamed enough?
A man in a high-end suit walked over, waving his hand, and the bodyguards beside him pulled Olivia away.
Who are you to say that? If it weren't for her, how could I have become the laughingstock of the capital? Now I've lost my position as the heir. Are you happy?
All right, it's not like you were capable anyway.
The bodyguards gagged Olivia and stuffed her into the car. Turning around, Henry walked up to Sophia and looked down at her.
So you're the one bullying our family.
No, it wasn't me. I didn't mean to.
TSK, to be bullied by someone like this, Olivia is really useless.
Sophia was trembling with fear. How could she have known that the poor student at school was the heir to a wealthy family? Olivia's family was one of the top in the capital, but they always protected their children well, so it was impossible for ordinary people to know their identity. Letting the younger generation fend for themselves after adulthood was their way of training. But that didn't mean the family wouldn't intervene.
Miss Emily? I didn't recognize you after standing here for so long, my mistake. How about a drink next time?
I'd be honored.
The Olivia family was indeed powerful, but Miss Sue was no less formidable. Sophia clearly knew this too. Realizing my presence, she tried to rush towards me.
Emily, save me. I did it for you, you can't just leave me.
The bodyguards held her down firmly.
Miss Emily, a friend of yours?
In Sophia's hopeful gaze, I curled up a cruel smile.
Not a friend, just an enemy.
Sophia's expression turned even more pitiful than crying.
Emily, what are you saying? I'm your cousin, how could I be your enemy?
I squatted down, gently tidying her messy hair, but my voice was as eerie as a ghost seeking revenge.
Mr. Henry, my sister is most afraid of the cold. Please make sure to keep her warm with lots of fire.
The Olivia family was furious, and the Johnson family also faced difficulties for a while. Mr. Johnson wanted to protect John, as he was his favorite son. Facing the risk of breaking cooperation with the Olivia family, William acted decisively, single-handedly sidelining Mr. Johnson. Not only did he send John away, but he also bought all of John's shares at the lowest cost. After this incident, many people were dissatisfied with Mr. Johnson. Now, William had the power to challenge Mr. Johnson in the boardroom. As for Linda, I hadn't planned on dealing with her, but now it seemed like a bonus. I once thought Linda truly loved George. When I was a few years old, if I accidentally used the same chopsticks as George, Linda would scream and scold me. Since then, I could only eat their leftovers. I once genuinely believed it was all my fault. Now, I realized she never loved me at all. The video was shot from a very tricky angle. According to the private detective, Sophia suggested having a family trip before their divorce. Initially, George disagreed, but Sophia promised to pay for the trip herself, so George agreed. Sophia, under the pretext of taking pictures of George, pushed him towards the mountain top. The video captured the moment Linda and Sophia jointly pushed George off the cliff. I had handed that video to the police long ago. I believed Linda would be in prison before Sophia. The police station called, saying Linda insisted on seeing me. I gladly agreed, eager to see her current miserable state.
Emily, your aunt was the best to you when you were little. Please, ask your mother to save me.
Behind the bars, Linda cried her heart out, looking extremely pitiful. She had previously sought out Miss Sue, but my mother had long been disappointed in her and now avoided her completely. So she turned to me.
Really, Aunt? You were so good to me when I was little?
Linda nodded repeatedly, looking just like Sophia.
Then why didn't you even buy me underwear?
What underwear, Emily, when you were little?
She suddenly choked, then remembered something, her eyes filled with terror, and her finger trembled as she pointed at me.
You are Jenny.
You remember me, Mom. I'm so heartbroken.
I touched the bars, right at the height of Linda's neck, but my hand couldn't reach through. I felt a bit regretful.
Aren't you supposed to be gone? How are you still alive? You.
Mom.
I shook my head, interrupting her.
I am indeed gone.
Jenny, save Mom. You don't want Mom to be gone, right? It was wrong of me before, save me, and I will be good to you.
Linda's eyes darted around, and suddenly she knelt on the ground with a thud.
Mom, can I ask you a question first?
What question? Save me first.
She yelled at me anxiously, but when she looked up, she met my pitch-black eyes, as if frozen by something.
You can ask anything, my dear daughter.
I looked at her and asked the question that had trapped me in that fire for a lifetime, word by word.
Mom, why don't you love me?
She felt guilty for a moment, instinctively wanting to refute, but I interrupted her.
Think carefully before you answer, or I'll start with your body. You should know I can do it, right, Mom?
Linda trembled on the ground, looking at me, completely enveloped in fear.
3.
I smiled broadly at her through the bars, holding a dagger in my left hand, the blade reflecting a cold light that dazzled her eyes. and my other hand, I raised in front of her.
2,
1. I'll tell. I'll tell.
Linda's psychological defenses had long collapsed, crying and begging me to stay away. TSK, I was a bit disappointed, thinking she could hold out a bit longer. But I still put away the dagger and gestured for her to speak.
Back then, when you and your sister were little, your grandmother was very dissatisfied with me, saying I gave birth to 2 girls and tormented me in various ways. Your father had a condition, and there would be no sons to carry on the family name.
Get to the point.
I impatiently clicked my tongue and threw the dagger at her hand, scaring her into trembling.
At that time, a Taoist said you had a lucky fate and would have a smooth life. I thought, why should I suffer so much while you have such a good life? So I wanted to create some hardships for you to toughen you up.
Seeing I didn't respond, Linda's voice grew smaller and smaller.
You promised not to hurt me.
The scene was eerily quiet.
Hey.
After a long time, I sneered.
Of course, I won't hurt you.
Her eyes lit up, and she crawled over.
Then save me, please.
No.
I smiled innocently.
Doesn't Mom like hardships? From now on, stay in prison peacefully. I'll make sure they don't give you clothes. You must remain chaste for Dad.
Outside the police station, Miss Sue was waiting at the door for me. I wasn't surprised at all. I walked up to her and softly called out.
Aunt Lily.
I clearly saw her body tremble. We went to the riverside, the river where Emily Sue had once jumped. I just sat on the ground and invited Miss Sue to join me. She didn't mind and sat down beside me. I looked ahead, a few birds flew over the river, so free. I chuckled softly.
Aunt Lily, when did you know I wasn't Emily?
Miss Sue sat beside me, not answering my question, but turned to look at me seriously.
You really are a good and obedient child. I've been very happy and joyful during this time. I've felt a mother-daughter bond from you that I never felt from Emily before.
I continued to smile and nod, not saying much. But suddenly, Miss Sue started crying. I couldn't bear to see her cry, so I wiped her tears. But she held my hand.
I knew you were Jenny, I knew within a few days.
But
I was always greedy, wanting to know where my Emily went.
Miss Sue cried heavily, avoiding my gaze. I knew she felt guilty, felt uneasy. One body, but 2 souls. She wanted Emily, so I had to leave. But why feel guilty? This was how it should be. I moved closer to her, trying hard to hug her.
don't cry, okay? Just give me a little more time, and I'll return Emily to you soon. And everything that happened during this time, Emily knows, so don't worry about her.
I rested my head on Miss Sue's shoulder.
Let me lean on you for a few more seconds, it's almost time to say goodbye.
The revenge was long over, and I could clearly feel my soul being stripped away. The voice of the Reaper echoed in my ear.
The blessings of the koi fish have been used up, it's time to reincarnate. This life was tough, I hope your next life will be happy.
My consciousness blurred, and I gradually closed my eyes.
Thank you.
To the Reaper, and to Ms. Sue. 7 years later, Emily Sue fully took over Ms. Sue's company. She also had a lovely boy named Alex. 5 years ago, William and Henry both wanted to marry Emily Sue. But Emily Sue refused. She knew they had initially interacted with someone who wasn't her. So she spent 2 years finding a boy who truly loved her. One sunny day, Miss Sue accompanied Alex in the garden downstairs. For some reason, Alex had been quiet and reserved since birth. So no matter how many kids were in the garden, he didn't want to interact with any of them. This had troubled the family for a long time. But today was different.
Grandma, I want to play with her.
Miss Sue was surprised by Alex's change, but after the surprise came immense joy.
Go ahead, remember to be polite to the little girl.
Okay.
Miss Sue leaned back on the garden bench, half closing her eyes to enjoy the sun. After a while, someone called her. Miss Sue woke up groggily, but froze when she saw the girl's face. Alex, seeing Miss Sue awake, pushed the girl forward. The girl smiled brightly and introduced herself confidently.
Hello, Grandma. My name is Jenny. My nickname is Luna. I'm 6 years old. I have parents who love me very much and lots of friends.
The sun was shining brightly, and the girl's smile was radiant, like a little moon loved by everyone.